How do you survive the moment you realize your entire life was a lie? I caught my husband cheating. But not just with anyone. With my own mother. In my house. In my bed. The bed we bought together when we got married. I still remember the smell of her perfume in the sheets. The same one she knew I always wore. It wasn't a mistake. It was betrayal. Twisted in the cruelest way. And it shattered everything I believed about love, loyalty, and family. How do you heal when your husband and your mother tear your heart apart? Together. What happened behind my back for years was darker than I ever imagined. Are you ready to hear the whole truth? Subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, because this story, my story, is just getting started. I used to think we had the perfect little life. Suburban bliss, they call it. Our home in upstate New York was cozy, filled with warm coffee mornings and late-night Netflix cuddles. The kind of place where neighbors wave from their porches and kids ride bikes until sunset. We had been married for 8 years, and despite the routine, I believed in us. He was charming, attentive, never forgot to kiss me goodbye or say he loved me. And my mom, she was always around, helping with the kids, Sunday dinners, holidays. Looking back, there were signs, not obvious ones, just little shifts in behavior. She started coming over more often when I wasn't home, always with a just wanted to help excuse. Sometimes I'd find things moved, or groceries I didn't buy in the fridge. She'd hum around the kitchen like she owned the place, always smiling. Too much. I brushed it off. It was just mom being mom. She loved to be involved. Besides, she was my mother. The one person I thought I could trust unconditionally. My husband, Mark, had a way of making everyone feel comfortable. That was his charm. He could make strangers laugh at checkout lines, or calm a crying baby in seconds. So when he and my mom got along well, I thought it was sweet. I'd even joked that she liked him more than she liked me. We all laughed. I felt lucky, proud even. My family got along. That was supposed to be a good thing. But love can blind you, especially when it wears a mask of normalcy. There were times I'd come home from work early and find them on the porch together, laughing, always laughing. And yet, when I'd appear, the air would shift subtly. The laughter would end too fast. Their eyes would avoid mine for a second too long. But I told myself I was being paranoid, stressed from work, overthinking, like always. I even mentioned it once to Mark, and he smiled, pulled me close, kissed my forehead. "Don't be silly," he said. "You're tired, babe. Get some rest." There was a warmth missing in our marriage that I couldn't name back then. Our intimacy had changed. Not completely gone, just quieter, mechanical. But life gets busy. Kids, bills, responsibilities. You don't expect fireworks every day. Still, I craved something, a connection I couldn't seem to find anymore. So I focused on the kids, on work, on surviving the day-to-day. And while I did that, they were building something else right under my nose. One afternoon, I saw my mother texting on her phone and smiling. It wasn't the smile of a grandmother talking to a friend. It was softer, intimate. I felt an uneasiness rise in my chest, but once again, I buried it deep. My mom wouldn't do that. She was flawed, yes, but not like that. She raised me, held me through heartbreaks, knew every secret I'd ever cried to her. But the worst kind of betrayal doesn't come from enemies. It comes from those you love most. Sometimes, I wonder, if I had trusted my gut earlier, could I have stopped it? Was there a single moment where the truth peeked through and I chose to look away? Or was I just another wife in denial, clinging to the idea of a perfect family? Either way, the storm was already building, and I had no idea what was coming. Because the day I opened my bedroom door and found them there, everything changed. But before that moment, I was just a woman trying to hold her family together. It was a rainy Thursday, one of those gray days where the sky feels heavy. I'd left work early because I wasn't feeling well. My head ached, and I just wanted to crawl into bed. The streets were slick, windshield wipers struggling against the downpour. And all I could think was, I can't wait to get home, take a hot shower, and sleep until tomorrow. I parked in the driveway, surprised to see my mother's car already there. I didn't think much of it. She had a key. She liked to drop by unannounced. As I opened the door, the house felt off, too quiet. No TV on, no music playing, just the sound of rain against the windows. The living room was tidy, like no one had been there at all. But then I noticed 2 coffee mugs in the sink, still warm to the touch. One had lipstick on the rim, mine, but I hadn't used that cup in days. My stomach twisted. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones. I called out, "Mom, Mark," but no one answered. Their shoes were by the door, his jacket on the chair. I moved slowly, heart racing, the hallway stretching longer with every step. There was a faint sound, fabric shifting, low whispers, then silence. I stopped in front of our bedroom door. My hand trembled on the handle. I wish I'd turned back. But I opened it. And there they were. My husband, my mother, in bed. In my bed. Her hands on him. His face buried in her neck. The blankets tangled around their bodies like a twisted lie. They didn't see me at first. I stood there, frozen, breathless, shattered. And when they finally looked at me, neither said a word. Not even sorry. I couldn't scream. I couldn't cry. I just stared, like my soul had left my body. I backed away slowly, like I was watching someone else's nightmare. Then, I turned and ran. Out of the house, into the rain, into the street. The world blurred through tears I didn't even feel fall. Neighbors peeked from windows, but I couldn't stop. I had to keep moving, because if I stopped, I would collapse, and I didn't want them to see me broken. I ended up in my car, soaked to the skin, gripping the steering wheel with white knuckles. My whole body was shaking. My heart, I couldn't even feel it beating. I sat there for what felt like hours, trying to make sense of it. Was this a dream? A cruel hallucination? No, it was real. Too real. The betrayal burned in my chest like fire, and yet I felt nothing. Nothing but the sound of their silence echoing in my ears. You think you'll know what to do when you're betrayed like that? Yell, throw things, demand answers. But sometimes the pain is too big, too loud, and all you can do is breathe. I didn't go back inside that day. I drove to my sister's house and collapsed in her arms. I told her everything, or at least what I could manage between sobs, and even she couldn't believe it. Mom, our mom. But yes, it had happened, and nothing would ever be the same again. The next morning, I woke up on my sister's couch with swollen eyes and a hollow chest. She handed me a cup of tea, but I couldn't taste it. Everything tasted like ashes. My phone had over 20 missed calls, mostly from Mark, a few from my mom. I stared at the screen, fingers trembling, debating whether to block them both forever. But instead, I turned the phone off. I didn't want apologies. I didn't want explanations. I wanted silence. Silence was the only thing that didn't lie to me. I stayed with my sister for the next few days, barely speaking, barely eating. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Their bodies, their eyes, their betrayal. I kept thinking of that damn comforter, the one with the yellow flowers we picked together. She used that to cover her shame, to hide her sin. How could my own mother do this to me? What was I to her? Just competition? And Mark? Was I ever really enough for him? Or just a placeholder for her? I didn't tell the kids. Not yet. They were too young to understand that their grandmother was no longer welcome in our lives. They kept asking why Daddy wasn't coming home, why Grandma wasn't visiting. I smiled, lied through my teeth, and cried in the bathroom afterward. Children shouldn't carry the weight of adult sins. But I was barely holding that weight myself. I felt like I was crumbling in slow motion. Eventually, I had to go back to the house. My house. I waited until I knew no one would be there. I wasn't ready for a confrontation. Walking through the door felt like walking into a tomb. The walls echoed with laughter that no longer belonged to me. Every object was poisoned with memory. The couch, the coffee table, the mirror. Even the framed wedding photo mocked me from the hallway. I went into the bedroom and stood there for a long time. The bed had been made. Of course it had. Mark always cleaned up his messes. But I could still smell her perfume. That sickly sweet scent of betrayal. I ripped the sheets off, tore the pillows, emptied the drawers. It wasn't rage, it was grief in its most desperate form. Like, if I could erase the physical evidence, I could erase the pain. That night, I slept on the couch with the TV on to drown out the thoughts. I kept expecting someone to knock, to plead, to explain, to beg, but no one came. The house stayed quiet. The silence now felt like home, and I realized maybe I needed that, to be alone, to rebuild from the ashes, to remember who I was before them, before this. Because whoever that woman in the mirror was now, she was not the same. My sister told me, you have to confront them eventually. But how do you look in the eyes of people who destroyed your soul? And pretend you're okay? I wasn't ready. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But the truth was out now, and the damage was done. So the next chapter wasn't about them. It was about me. And maybe, just maybe, that was the beginning of my healing. It was a Sunday afternoon when I finally decided to face them. I didn't plan it. I just drove. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe fury. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it was holding me together. I parked in front of my mother's house, heart pounding in my ears. The same house I spent holidays in, cried in, grew up in, now tainted. Part of me hoped they wouldn't be there. But part of me needed them to be. She opened the door before I knocked, like she was expecting me. Her face was calm to calm. No shame, no guilt, just softness, sweetheart, she whispered, like I was still her baby. My stomach turned. I pushed past her without saying a word. Mark was in the living room, standing awkwardly, eyes full of something, maybe regret, maybe fear. I looked at both of them, and the silence swallowed the air. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I spoke calmly, too calmly. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. They exchanged glances, like two criminals, deciding who'd take the blame. "A few months," Mark said. It was. It wasn't supposed to happen. That sentence broke something in me. Supposed to happen. Like it was a calendar mistake. My mom added, "We never meant to hurt you." And that's when I laughed. I laughed so hard it scared me. The kind of laugh that sounds like breaking. "You didn't mean to hurt me. You slept with my husband in my bed." I pointed at Mark. "You made vows to me, then to her, and you gave birth to me." The betrayal was so layered, it felt like drowning in acid. She reached out to touch me, and I pulled back like her fingers burned. "You're both dead to me," I said. "I want nothing from either of you." Mark tried to explain, said it was emotional confusion, loneliness, temptation, that I'd been distant, always tired, always caring for others, but not for him, blaming me, even now. I couldn't believe the audacity. My mother just sat there, tears finally forming. But I didn't care. Tears meant nothing. Not after what they did. You don't get to cry when you destroy your daughter's world. I walked out without slamming the door. Quiet, final, full of weight. Outside, the sun was setting, casting an orange glow over everything. It should have felt symbolic, but all I felt was hollow. I had hoped for answers, for closure. What I got was worse. Their justifications. That's when I knew I couldn't fix this. I wouldn't forgive. And I had to start protecting myself from them, from memories, from love. That confrontation didn't free me. Not immediately, but it lit a fire in me. The fire to survive, to rebuild not the life I had, but the life I deserved. One where betrayal wasn't welcome, where I could breathe again. They stole my trust, but not my strength. That still belonged to me. And from that moment on, I stopped looking back. The days that followed were the quietest of my life. Not peaceful, just still. The kind of stillness that comes after a storm destroys everything. I moved back into the house, not because I wanted to, but because it was mine. I needed to reclaim my space. Every room, every drawer, every breath of that air. I opened windows, burned candles, donated every sheet and pillow they touched. I scrubbed the walls like I was erasing ghosts. But memories aren't like dust. They don't wipe away with bleach. I found reminders everywhere. A photo under the bed, a necklace in the drawer. Even the way the morning light hit the hallway brought back the ache. Still, I didn't run. I stayed. I sat in the pain. I faced it. Because for the first time, I wasn't pretending everything was fine. I was grieving, not just the betrayal, but the death of my old life. I started therapy. I was hesitant at first. I didn't want to relive it. But talking helped. Crying helped. Screaming into a pillow helped. My therapist said, "You don't have to forgive to move on." That gave me permission to stop waiting for healing to look like forgiveness. I didn't want to heal for them. I wanted to heal for me. For the woman I was before the lies, and the woman I was becoming now. I also reconnected with myself in ways I hadn't in years. I started journaling again. I painted the kitchen yellow, my favorite color. I joined a women's support group at the community center. And in that circle of strangers, I found sisters in pain and strength. Some betrayed by husbands, others by family. All of us rebuilding. There was something sacred in that shared survival. My kids gave me purpose on the darkest days. Their laughter reminded me that not everything was broken. I didn't tell them the full truth, but I told them Daddy wasn't coming back. That Grandma was taking some time away, and that it wasn't their fault. They accepted it easier than I expected. Children are resilient. And in caring for them, I found slivers of light in my own healing. One night, I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize the woman staring back. Not because I looked broken, but because I looked strong. My eyes had seen too much, but they still burned with fire. There were lines on my face that hadn't been there before. Pain does that. But there was something new, too, peace. Not constant, but real. For the first time in months, I whispered to myself, "You're going to be okay." Healing wasn't pretty. It wasn't linear. Some days, I still cried in the shower. But slowly, the house felt like mine again. The silence didn't scare me anymore. And when I passed by the bed that once held betrayal, I no longer froze. Because I had changed the sheets. I had painted the walls. I had claimed back my space. And no one would take it from me again. It had been 3 months since the confrontation when I saw Mark again. He showed up at the house unannounced, like nothing had happened. I was watering the garden when I saw his car pull into the driveway. For a second, my breath caught. That automatic panic. the muscle memory of fear. But I stood still, hose in hand, and watched him walk toward me like a stranger. And in many ways, that's exactly what he was now. "Can we talk?" he asked, hands in his pockets, eyes searching mine. I wanted to say no. I wanted to scream. But instead, I nodded once. We sat on the porch, the same place I used to find him laughing with her. He looked older. Guilt ages people. Or maybe it was just the way I saw him now. He started talking about therapy, about regret, about how he missed the kids. I listened, not because I cared, but because I needed to hear the lie break. He didn't ask to come back. At least he had that much decency. But he did ask if we could fix things eventually. I looked at him and said, "You didn't just cheat. You shattered the foundation. You didn't lie to a stranger. You betrayed the woman who gave you everything. And you didn't do it with some girl from work. You did it with my mother." His eyes welled up, but I didn't flinch. I was done crying for him. He asked if I hated him. I paused. "No," I said. "I pity you. Because you gave up real love for something that can never be pure. Whatever you had with her, it wasn't love. It was weakness, wearing perfume." He tried to say something, but I stood up. That conversation was over. I wasn't there to forgive. I was there to close the door. And when I walked back into the house, I locked it behind me. A week later, my mother sent a letter, written by hand, pages of apologies, childhood memories, and twisted justifications. She said she was lonely, that she thought Mark saw her in ways no one else did. She talked about being a woman first, a mother second. That line broke me, because I had always been her daughter first, always, and she chose desire over decades of love and trust. I didn't reply. I tore the letter and burned the pieces in the fireplace. Some bridges aren't meant to be rebuilt. Some wounds deserve their scars. I had spent too long cleaning up after their fire. I wouldn't let them light another match. The silence that followed was beautiful. No more messages. No more knocks. No more apologies. Just space to breathe, to live, to move forward, alone, but whole. That chapter wasn't about revenge. It was about boundaries. It was about learning that peace sometimes looks like letting go completely. I wasn't interested in being the bigger person. I was interested in being free. And that freedom came with hard choices, but they were mine to make. And for the first time, I wasn't a wife. I wasn't a daughter. I was simply me. After cutting ties with both of them, I was forced to redefine the word family. It wasn't about blood anymore. It was about loyalty, safety, truth. I found comfort in unexpected places. My sister's daily check-ins. My best friend's late-night calls. Even my neighbors, the ones who once just waved, began offering warm meals and kind words. The village I never thought I had stepped forward when everything collapsed. And in their kindness, I began to feel human again. I started creating new traditions with my kids. Sunday breakfasts with pancakes shaped like hearts. Movie nights with homemade popcorn and sleeping bags in the living room. I was rebuilding not just our routine, but our foundation. They needed to see joy again. Not the version I faked, but something real. And slowly, they started laughing more. And I started believing in tomorrow again. Mother's Day came. It was brutal. Every commercial, every store display, a slap in the face. How do you celebrate motherhood when your own mother destroyed yours? But instead of running from it, I made it about me and my kids. We went to the park, ate ice cream, and I told them stories about when they were born. It hurt, but it also healed something small inside me. I used to wonder if I was broken, if their betrayal had cracked me beyond repair. But now I see it differently. I wasn't broken. I was split open. And from that rawness, something new began to grow. Not softer, not harder, just wiser, more aware of who I let into my world, and fiercely protective of the peace I fought so hard to build. There were still nights when the past came crawling back. Triggers I didn't expect: a scent, a song, an old voicemail. But instead of drowning in it, I allowed the wave to wash over me. I whispered to myself, that was then, this is now. Because healing doesn't erase the past. It just makes it hurt less. And that was enough for me. People often say, time heals everything. But I don't believe that anymore. Time doesn't heal. Choice does. Every day I chose to wake up, to get dressed, to smile, to try again. It wasn't easy. It wasn't linear. But it was mine. And with every tiny act of courage, I proved to myself, I'm not just surviving. I'm living again. Family is no longer defined by who shares my DNA. It's defined by who shows up, who listens, who stays. And while I lost two people I once loved the most, I gained something far more sacred. My voice, my truth, my peace, and I would never trade that for anyone ever again. Not even the woman who once gave me life. There was a time I thought I wouldn't survive this. I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering if I'd ever breathe without pain again. But slowly, breath by breath, I began to rise. Not all at once, more like climbing out of quicksand. Every choice to keep going was an act of defiance. I wasn't just healing, I was reclaiming myself. I started doing things just for me. Small things, like dancing in the kitchen while cooking dinner. Big things, like applying for that art program I had always been afraid to try. I rediscovered my love for photography, capturing raw, imperfect moments. Each photo told a story, not of tragedy, but of transformation. I began seeing beauty in broken things, including myself. I stopped apologizing for needing space, stopped explaining my pain to people who didn't deserve my vulnerability. I let go of the version of me who tolerated silence, disrespect, and emotional crumbs. And in her place, a new woman emerged, one who knew her worth. She didn't beg. She didn't chase. She didn't shrink herself anymore. She took up space. Fully, fiercely, unapologetically. People began to notice. Friends called me strong, brave, resilient. But I didn't feel like any of those things. I just felt tired. Healing isn't heroic. It's messy, quiet, and often invisible. It's crying in your car and still showing up to work. It's forgiving yourself for staying too long and celebrating the day you finally left. That's not weakness. That's strength in its truest form. I started writing letters I'd never send. To my mother. To Mark. To the version of me who thought love meant loyalty at any cost. I burned some. I kept others. Each one was a release. Not for them, for me. So I wouldn't carry their poison any longer. I didn't want closure. I wanted freedom. And slowly, I found it word by word, breath by breath. One day, I looked in the mirror and whispered, "I'm proud of you." I never thought I'd say that to myself again. But there I was, still standing, still fighting, still alive. And not just alive, but awake to the truth of who I am. I am not what happened to me. I am what I chose to become after it. And that is a power no betrayal can take away. I don't believe in happily ever after anymore. I believe in honesty, in growth, in peace that doesn't depend on anyone else. And maybe that's better than fairy tales. Because it's real. It's earned. And it's mine. I built this life from rubble. And I'm just getting started. There are some lessons you don't learn in books or from kind advice. You learn them in silence, in tears, in sleepless nights where your soul aches. You learn them when the people you trusted most become the reason you stop trusting. And yet, those very wounds can become your greatest teachers. I learned what love isn't. I learned what family can become. And most importantly, I learned who I am. I learned that betrayal doesn't always come wrapped in malice. Sometimes, it arrives dressed in warmth, wearing a familiar face. But pain is pain, no matter how softly it speaks. And healing begins when you stop excusing what broke you. When you stop hoping they'll undo what they so easily did. And when you start choosing yourself, even when it feels lonely. I used to think forgiveness was something I owed them. But I've come to understand that forgiveness is a gift for me, not for them. It's not forgetting, or pretending it didn't matter. It's letting go of the weight so I can move forward free. And while I haven't fully forgiven, maybe I never will. I'm no longer bound. My peace matters more than their repentance ever could. I learned to sit with pain without letting it define me, to hold space for grief and still find joy in the same breath, to allow myself bad days without labeling them as failure, to know that strength isn't in pretending, it's in feeling and still choosing to live. And I've learned that vulnerability is not weakness, it's the birthplace of connection. And I'm no longer ashamed of the cracks. They let the light in. I also learned that boundaries are not cruel. They are acts of self-respect, of protection, of love for myself. I don't answer blocked numbers. I don't read messages that steal my peace. And I no longer try to fix what didn't break because of me. I'm not a healer of other people's wounds anymore. I'm the guardian of my own. The pain didn't disappear. It transformed. It became wisdom, compassion, a deeper knowing of what I will and won't accept. It sharpened my vision, softened my heart, and strengthened my spine. I don't fear betrayal anymore. I recognize its scent. And I trust myself enough now to walk away the first time. Because once you rise from ashes, you never bow to fire again. This journey wasn't about revenge or proving a point. It was about rediscovering a woman who had been buried under everyone else's need. And now that she's here, bold, honest, unshakable, I protect her fiercely. Every scar, every tear, every quiet victory is part of her. And I wouldn't trade her for the illusion of a perfect past. Because this version of me, she's real, she's free, and she's enough. Closure didn't come from an apology. It didn't come from answers, explanations. or time. It came the day I stopped waiting for them to feel sorry. The day I stopped replaying the moment I opened that bedroom door. I stopped needing to understand why they did it, and started asking what I needed to feel whole again. I made peace with never knowing all the details, because the truth I already had was enough, more than enough. It told me everything I needed to know about who they were, and who I was not. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was a survivor, a builder, a protector of my own peace. And I no longer lived in the shadow of their choices. I was writing my story in bold ink now. For me, I let myself cry on their birthdays. I let myself grieve on anniversaries, but I also let myself laugh on Tuesdays and sing while doing the dishes. I stopped fearing the quiet. I stopped checking my phone for names I'd blocked. I started lighting candles at night, not to remember the past, but to bless the present. This home, this life, this heart, it was mine again, and no one would take that away from me. Some days, I still carry the echo of what happened. It hums beneath the surface, a quiet reminder of what I survived. But that echo doesn't control me anymore. It used to scream. Now it whispers. And when it does, I remind myself. I chose myself. I chose to heal. And that's a choice I make every single day. I no longer wish they'd come back and say sorry, because I don't need their regret to validate my pain. I lived it. I walked through it, and I came out the other side. Not untouched, but unbroken. My story isn't about betrayal anymore. It's about who I became after it. So if you're listening to this and your heart is heavy, know this. You are not alone, and this pain won't last forever. You are not what they did to you. You are what you do next, and you don't need their permission to rise. You don't need their love to be worthy. You only need you. What would you do if the two people you trusted most destroyed your world from inside your home? If this story moved you, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. I share stories that speak to the soul. And don't leave yet. The next video is already waiting for you on the screen. Click it now. I promise. It's one you'll never forget.